Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching a clip from the Sideline podcast. If you're interested in watching the full show, head over to Spotify and whilst you're there, leave a 5-star review. It would be very much appreciated. But for now, enjoy this little segment. We're going to bring in new rules in. So we've had club rules, we've had league rules. Now it's a rule that has a lot of controversy about it, but for me, it's a rule that has had to be changed for a very long time, especially since VAR has been brought in. So, there's a new offside rule coming in, which I think is good news for all football fans. But with the way it's changing, is it going to change how long it actually takes to do the check? So, for a player to be offside, their full body has to be in front of the defender. So rather than an elbow being in front, or if Suarez's teeth are in front, then it's deemed offside. It does now have to be a full body. Do you think that is more beneficial for teams, fans? How do you feel about it?
Well, it's obviously getting trialled, isn't it? But it's probably going to get approved by the sounds of it. So, it's really beneficial for attackers. If you're a striker, it's massively beneficial because it's going to go your way rather than the other way. So obviously, if a toenail was offside, then obviously it give advantage to a defender. The defender could get a little bit lucky if he hadn't quite stepped up properly, but someone's shoulder was in front. So it's definitely going to benefit the attacker. But I just feel like I agree the rule had to be changed because of VAR, but we're not really fixing the problem because we're still going to be looking for toenails. We're still going to be looking for, is the defender's shoulder playing the striker's heel offside? Yep. We're still going to be looking at stupid stuff like that for a stupid amount of time. I feel like it's not the answer. I feel like it's not the right. It's not the right thing to do. I feel like you're just taking a problem, which was toenails and shoulders being offside, and changing it to just give the advantage to the attacker, and just flipping it rather than actually trying to fix it. I still think, I just felt like leave the offside rule as it is, but in terms of, well, not leave it as it is, but just like a slight tweak. Like I think I've mentioned before in like an earlier episode, that why don't we just have to have clear lines between the feet? So only the feet count, because obviously, if you're running forward as an attacker, your head's normally going to be like forward, or your shoulder's going to be forward.
And everyone understood that, yeah.
It's unfair punishing a striker for running a certain way, like a certain running technique. So I think just go off the feet, and then have like a thicker line. I know not everybody can see what I'm doing, but have a thicker line rather than these stupid thin blue and red lines. Have a thicker line, and if them lines overlap, he's onside.
Yeah.
So even if the striker's feet are ahead of the defenders, but both lines overlap, like the red and blue line, then he's onside. If there's clear daylight between the two lines, then he's off.
Yeah.
So it still gives a slight advantage to the attacker, but it doesn't mean that like the attacker's like left back end stud could be playing him onside now. Because that's what we're going to go down to. We're just going the other way now. I just felt like just simplify it so everybody knows. It goes on the feet. The lines are now thicker. If the lines don't overlap, he's offside. If the lines do overlap, he's onside. That would completely end all controversy.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows, regardless of where his shoulder is or how he's running or if his chest's facing down, it goes off the feet of a defender. So there's none of this going off shoulders. Goes off the feet of a defender, the feet of the attacker. If the lines overlap, he's onside. If there's gaps between the lines, then he's off. That simplifies everything and would probably half the time it takes. Now again, I'm no expert. There's probably reasons why that might not work. But just to me as a fan, that makes so much more sense when I'm thinking, okay, I know the rule. It's going off the feet, regardless of where his shoulder or head is. Okay, do the lines overlap? Yes, he's onside.
Yeah.
This whole thing now, I get we're trying to give the advantage to the attacker because when I was growing up watching football, that makes me sound so old, but when I was growing up watching football, it was always the linesmen were told, give advantage to the attacker. If he looks slightly off, don't put your flag up because people want to see goals.
Yeah.
So unless he's miles offside, don't put your flag up, give advantage to the attacker. So we're going back to giving advantage to attackers, which again, as a striker, it's brilliant. But it's, I feel like you're just going to have the same problems. You're just going to be looking at toenails and heels and shoulders all
Yep.
over again. The only difference is you'll probably see slightly more goals, which is great for a fan. It's not great if it goes against you, but it's great for a fan. But I just feel like, again, the rule I suggested would clear everything up, and there would be no debate. Because there's been times, I remember we watched the Everton Newcastle game, but there was times when I thought, like, we were having a discussion, like, he's offside, and you were like, no, he's not. And I was like, he is, and you were like, no, he's not. And even when we could see the lines, we were like, we haven't measured it right, or the angle, look at the angle, or why they're measuring off his boot when his knees further back. Like, you could just simplify the whole thing, feet only. If there's a gap, he's offside between the two lines. Like, that's simple. There's no discussion then. You know what I mean? Like, it just simplifies it.
I think it is a step in the right direction. It definitely is a rule that has been needed to be changed massively. But yeah, you're spot on. Like, even adding this rule, it is more beneficial for attackers, because even for fans, it's still going to add that delay in. It's still going to add that bit of, is he actually onside or is he off? Like, that nothing like that's going to change. They're still going to be zooming in, putting the lines in, but this time seeing whether his elbow's in line. It's still going to be the exact same, but just a little different tweak to it. But I think I'm going to fully agree on you here. Like, go off your feet, because that is how you get. I don't understand, if your head is in front of the defender, how does that give you more of an advantage than if, like, you are running with your feet, you are getting in front of your defenders with your feet. Like, what's it matter if you're? It's like they even count your armpit as on, like, they go off that for onside and offside.
Which is ridiculous, because
you can't even score off at time.
But literally, you're told from a young age to point where you want the ball.
Yep.
So you point where you want the ball, extends your armpit or your shoulder, and then that gives you more of a chance of being offside. So then, what, you're going to coach kids not to point where they want the ball, and they have to be telepathic. Like, it's just the whole thing with my whole issue with VAR is it takes away from a fan experience. I know we've spoke about it on previous episodes, so I don't want to go like massively into it. But like, I've watched games this year where I haven't celebrated goals because I've been thinking, oh, it's going to be given offside, or it was close, or whatever. I don't want to get, I don't want that feeling of, oh my God, we haven't scored.
I think me and you've been speaking during a game, and you've messaged Big Win, wait, I'm not celebrating yet, I'm not celebrating yet. Because it does have that delay in.
It's just ridiculous. It takes away from the fans. Like, the fans pay, especially in this country. It's another thing we brought up recently in terms of like foreign countries having cheaper tickets. In this country, we pay a stupid amount of money to go and watch a game. We do not want to stop celebrating goals. And then people say, oh yeah, but you celebrate the goal twice. But you don't, because the first time I'm celebrating, I'm not really celebrating. I'm thinking in my head, or I've said before, I'm looking at a referee, I'm looking at their goalkeeper, I'm looking at their centre-half, I'm looking at their captain, and I'm not actually watching the celebration or living in the moment. I'm too busy thinking ahead of, oh my God, what's going to disallow this? And then I'm thinking back to, well, a minute ago there was a dodgy tackle in the midfield. We could bring it back for that. Oh no. And then before you know it, you've completely lost the moment, and you're like, well, I didn't really live in that moment. I'm glad it's been allowed, but it's took away from a fan experience. And the other thing I didn't mention, I don't know why I forgot to mention this on the episode when we talked about VAR, but what really bugs me is when it takes a long time, it completely kills the momentum. So who were Newcastle? Newcastle were playing, it was Southampton. We went 1-0 down, and we were on top. I think it was still the first half. We were miles on top. Wilson scored a goal and it got disallowed. It took about 4.5 minutes to disallow the goal. So we lost all momentum. Honestly, we were hammering, and we were attack after attack after attack. They couldn't catch the breath. This took 4.5 minutes. A Wilson goal was disallowed, and then Southampton were on top for about the next 5 minutes. I was like, that's complete. I'd rather you just rule the goal out. Just don't give it. And then we can still stay having momentum, but just kill the whole momentum of the game. It silenced the crowd. It dulled down the atmosphere. And it was a complete advantage for Southampton. If VAR didn't exist and the linesman just put his flag up, we would still have momentum and still be on top and still attack after attack after attack. So, again, it can completely change a game. You can go from being on the defence constantly to getting the VAR decision going your way to then being really comfortable on the ball and attacking again. So the whole thing VAR just doesn't work, and this whole rule change it's just changing the problems from, is he offside, in terms of what's going on with a defender to, well, is everything ahead of a defender? It's just changing the problem.
Yep.
But in terms of fans are just getting ripped off. Like, especially English fans, and that's not me saying that. I mean, I'm not really a proud Englishman, but as a fan of an English football club, it's just ridiculous that we pay all this money, and we're left staggered by some decisions.
Well, we've said before they've had the VAR in, which I've had. I'll happily admit that I think VAR's a good addition if it's used correctly. But our problem is, especially within English football, VAR's been shown it can be successful in like World Cups, Euros. But in the Premier League, you still have the same idiots making the same decisions. They've just got a screen to prove they actually are an idiot. Like that is what VAR is in the Premier League, and that's no exaggeration. There is some awful referees that still have a screen to watch. We can all see it clear as day, yet still not giving. I remember exactly the going back to the Newcastle versus Nottingham Forest. Some of the rules changed then. I think it was Longstaff that scored.
Yeah, but the rules changed after that game because they realised how ridiculous they were. It was if a player intentionally plays the ball, then the player of the other team can't be offside. But apparently the officials didn't think that, two Nottingham Forest players intentionally tried to play the ball. Like, we tried to clear it twice, that is intentionally playing the ball. Mm-hmm. But because they apparently didn't intentionally play it, then Longstaff was offside. But what is trying to clear the ball? That is intentionally trying to play. It's just... And then afterwards they changed the rule to intentionally or not intentionally, if it comes off an opposing player, you're not offside. So that goal would have counted. So another situation where we lost points. I know there was somewhere Newcastle got the other end of the luck, but that was... Luckily we won that game. We won that game 3-2. But or it might have been 2-1, but if we didn't win that game, that would have been huge in terms of Liverpool might have caught us or whatever. And you just think, it's just crazy. Like, the rules are so wishy-washy in terms of, well, you know what? We agree now that was a mistake, we're just going to change it. Well, no, because other teams will benefit from a goal we couldn't have. I feel like rules should only be changed at the end of a season. So it's at least a fair environment. Like, we changed the handball rule twice during last season.
Oh, God. I remember not this season, it's just gone, the season before. I remember when we played Manchester City, obviously it's a completely different rule. We played Manchester City, and it was 0-0 at the time, and Rodri, the ball's come up, hit him on his arm. His arm's in an unnatural position, and they didn't give it. They go on, win that game, obviously. They go on to win the Premier League, and we luckily just stay up. All we got were an apology. Like, what are we meant to do with that? I don't understand. They make an awful decision. They come out and apologise. What is that going to do? Like, imagine if we got relegated. Oh, well, at least we got an apology off the FA. Or if we go down by 2 points. Oh, at least we went down 2 points with an apology. Mm-hmm. Just make your decisions. Make sure they're right. But at the same time, just don't go too much in depth with it. Especially when you mentioned the how thin lines they do and how they check whether like his positioning is this side, or if you have to zoom in and have multiple takes, you give it the benefit of the doubt to the striker or the defender, depending which or. Like, stop taking 10 minutes to figure out whether someone's toenails are longer than the other.
Exactly. And also, thinking about rules, we need rules for VAR. So I feel like you shouldn't be allowed to slow anything down.
Yep.
Because if you slow down any tackle, it looks worse. And it's not a fair representation of how quick the game was moving. I mean, if it's blatantly high, like stupidly high, like somebody's knee height, you don't need to even slow it down. It's obvious it's a red card. Potentially pause it, because you could then see how high it is, but you shouldn't be allowed to like put it in slow motion in terms of a red card decision, because it's always going to look worse. Always. There is no situation where you can slow down a tackle and make it look better. You could pause a tackle. I think that should be a VAR rule. You can pause it in terms of where contact is made. But if you're just watching a tackle and looking for intent, you should watch it in full like speed, in real time.
I remember one tackle in particular. I think Manchester United played Crystal Palace, and Casemiro's ball, like, he's gone for the ball and his foot's gone over the ball. Like, he's hit the ball, because the Crystal Palace attackers actually got the ball at the same time. His foot's gone over, got him in the leg, and they've slowed it down so it looks 10 times worse. It looks like his leg's about to break. But in fact, it's an accident. His foot's gone over the top of the ball. He's gone to play the ball. But yeah, that's still a red card. It is just getting rules set, sticking to them, staying consistent. Because I'm not, like, I get it, I'm an Everton fan. We've had so many decisions against us. But I speak on 14 other teams in the Premier League. The top 6, so many, obviously, I'll not include Newcastle in there. The top 6 before Newcastle.
Yep.
The amount of decisions that went their way, but then wouldn't go the same way for other teams. I remember Michael Keane gave away a penalty against Brighton because he stood on top of someone's foot as they were running through on goal. Happened this season to us. Demarai Gray didn't get a penalty. I think it was against the Bournemouth game, last game of the season. So it is just setting stone with rules. Stop bending them. Stop changing for certain teams, or if one referee.
It's good to change rules, but don't do it in the middle of a season because it's bad enough having inconsistency of human decisions. I get there's going to be inconsistency because at the end of the day, humans are making decisions. But it's even more frustrating as a fan when you've had something happen to you like that Newcastle Nottingham Forest one, and then it's happened 3 weeks later when they've changed the rule and they've been allowed to keep their goal.
Like, imagine if you missed out. I know it rate Carabao Cup, but imagine if you missed out on top 4 because of that.
I know, but that just makes it worse. Like, just have the rule, and then if it happens 3 weeks later, you still disallow it. But again, the statement is, look, this is the rule we are looking at. But for the rest of the season, we need to honour that rule in terms of fairness, rather than just, okay, we agree now that was wrong on Newcastle, so we're just going to change rules so other teams can benefit in the same season.
Yep.
Like, your rules are set there. It's almost like registering a squad. Your rules are set there, and they can't change until the end of that season, ready for the season after. Even that would make a little bit more sense because you're probably then going to get less inconsistencies because they have to follow the rules. But I don't know. It's just like I say, in terms of VAR and rule changes, I agree with. And this offside one, I don't think is the answer. Obviously, I've given what I would do. I mean, again, I'm no football expert or anything like that. But
no, but we're a fan, aren't we? It's us that.
It's something I would go with personally is obviously like what I mentioned earlier. But I don't mind them trying to change the offside rule. I think it's good that we are trying, and we probably deserve credit, for trying to make a change. But for me, it's they're just moving the problem to the, other end of the spectrum, so to speak. But I know I've spoke earlier saying, why don't you just give captains free decisions? And then again, that would mean the ball's in play for longer, which means the fans get more football. Train up the goals. Like our officials are awful, other than like Jared Gillett and Michael Oliver. They're the only two who consistently normally get it right. I used to think Michael Oliver was a poo referee because I was like, oh, is he not giving that? And when you see a replay and you think, oh, I was wrong. He was actually right. And that happened quite a bit with him. And then Jared Gillett's come from Australia and he's just, in my opinion, the best referee in the Premier League by a mile. I don't know if that's really a compliment because the standard of the others is so low.
Yeah.
But again, just when Jared Gillett can referee Newcastle, I normally don't question it as much because I think, you know what, there's been times I've been watching it on TV and I thought he was wrong and he's actually been right, and I'm the one who's wrong and I've watched it on TV.
And I think to add on to that, I think Mike up your referees as well.